This is the podcast Eel Zebra's Transformations. I am the Eel Zebra. The main purpose of this podcast is to continue journaling so that I keep healing. This is not a diary, meaning that my records won't necessarily reflect events in their chronological order, nor do I promise that the details will be accurate. If listening to my processing of traumas helps someone else along the way, I'll take it as having accomplished something for the higher good of all concerned. But now, without further ado, let's start. Okay, I will admit, I have voices in my head. I listen to their dialogues and observe their conflicts. However, on a second thought, the word voices is not accurate. Dr. Richard Schwartz, the creator of the internal family systems branch of therapy, calls them parts. Parts sounds less labeling to me than voices. I'm aware of the harm labeling can cause. It can destroy and kill. I admit, I have labeled when I didn't know better, and I have been labeled. Neither was the right thing to do. I wasn't aware of these voices or parts. Maybe I thought they were my thoughts, but maybe I intentionally denied their existence until I reached out to my friend Mara on an impulse. I realized I had to have a blind spot, and she felt the right person to help me access what was hidden. Only when there was a space created for me to feel safe, I relaxed, zoomed in, got curious, and the voices started revealing their stories through their relationship dynamics. After that, I resumed journaling. Journal entry dated December 10th, 2024. Today, during our conversation, Mara created a space for me as a coach to help me gain clarity regarding my idea to work on a one-actor performance. I wanted to have my voice heard, and I wanted to express it in an artistic way, but I was not sure if a stage performance was the right form of art. She asked me to connect with my feelings and ask them to bring up the answer that was already there. I sat there for a while and there was nothing. I almost had to hold back my tears because I was supposed to feel, but there was blankness. No feelings. I felt so less than the others, meaning my former coaching clients whom I was able to help to access their feelings and connect to their archetypes. Mara helped me see that blankness had wisdom too. She encouraged me to ask blankness if it had a message, and blankness said, "Hi. My name is Protest." That allowed me to identify that blankness Protest had objections towards having to feel. Mara encouraged me to thank blankness Protest for feeling safe enough with me to be able to open up and speak about this. She asked me to go back and see if there was anything else. Immediately, I noticed there was a movement. It was a feeling named Joy Mischief, who peeked behind the black curtain that blankness Protest had installed on a side and said playfully, "Hi, I'm also here," which I'm sure you already know. Mara was wondering what the relationship between blankness protest and joy mischief was. And again I got the answer immediately. They were bodies. Bodies. What a choice of a word, and a load of information. End of record. I continued journaling using Mara's method, which seemed to be like that of Dr. Richard Schwartz method. No other parts that came forward had names of feelings. There were two human parts, Ilse and Bee. Ilse was that little girl who was named by her mom. Ilse always tries to do what is told to be the right thing to do and abide by the rules. Bee is an independent and freedom-loving creature who named herself using the first two letters of the last name of her husband number 2. She loves to sign her paintings and express herself artistically using that name, and Ilse's name, of course. She wouldn't agree with Ilse that sticking to the rules necessarily is the right thing to do, but otherwise she loves Ilse and Ilse loves Bee. There's also a wizard who can manifest miracles. That's if everyone else is on board, which hardly ever happens because, being so wise, wizard annoys everyone. So they bully her, and then wizard disappears in the vase. The two other parts that have come forward and spoken are lioness and chameleon. Chameleons are mysterious. There was a time when I was on a Mediterranean island. I lived there for about a year, hiding from my husband number 1. There was a little zoo next to the port. I met its owner, Constantino, who walked by the pier holding a female chameleon in his hands. I vividly remember the bright tropical plant and parrot print top I was wearing, and how Constantino stuck the chameleon in my hands and made me hold her close to my chest for spectators to see how the animal changed her colors to match my top. I remember him readjusting my hold so I could free one of my hands. Then he directed it towards the chameleon's belly. "Feel the eggs inside. She's pregnant," he said to the surprised and shocked me. Google search. Question: what are chameleons afraid of? Answer: chameleons are afraid of surprise and being handed, especially if they are wild caught or babies. Journal entry dated March 15th, 2025. This is the first of the 40 days on which the planet Mercury will be in retrograde. Astrologers say we can expect communication and transportation issues and being more introspective. The latter definitely happened to me during the previous Mercury retrograde period at the end of the last year, which resulted in the session with Mara. I do believe that planets affect us. I don't believe, though, that it is as straightforward as many want to take it. However, I will go with my gut feeling, which is telling me to wait before I share more about the lioness and chameleon. I'll keep journaling and be introspective and see what surprising insights they reveal. End of entry. Since I mentioned Dr. Richard Schwartz a couple of times before here, it feels right at this time to read some fragments from Chapter 1 of Dr. Richard Schwartz's book, No Bad Parts, Healing Trauma and Restoring Wholeness with the Internal Family Systems Model. The internal family is the family of parts that live in our heads, like the wizard, lioness, chameleon, and others who live in my head. We're all raised in what I call the mono-mind belief system. The idea that you have one mind, out of which different thoughts and emotions and impulses and urges emanate. That's a paradigm I believed in too, until I kept encountering clients who thought otherwise. Because the mono-mind is so ubiquitous and assumed in our culture, we never really questioned the truth of it. I want to help you take a second look at who you really are. I'm going to invite you to try on this different paradigm of multiplicity that internal family system espouses, and consider the possibility that you and everybody else is a multiple personality. And that's a good thing. I'm not suggesting that you have multiple personality disorder, now called dissociative identity disorder, Dr. Schwartz says. But I do think that people with that diagnosis are not so different from everyone else. The only difference is that people with the dissociative identity disorder suffered horrible abuse and their system of parts got blown apart more than most, so each part stands out in bolder relief and is more polarized and disconnected from the others. In other words, all of us are born with many subminds that are constantly interacting inside of us. This is in general what we call thinking, because the parts are talking to each other and to you constantly about things you have to do or debating the best course of action and so on. While it may sound creepy and crazy at first to think of yourself as a multiple personality, I hope to convince you that it's actually quite empowering. It's only disturbing because multiplicity has been pathologized in our culture. A person with separate autonomous personalities is viewed as sick or damaged, and the existence of their alters is considered simply the product of trauma, the fragmentation of their previous unitary mind. The mono-mind paradigm has caused us to fear our parts and view them as pathological. In our attempts to control what we consider to be disturbing thoughts and emotions, we just end up fighting, ignoring, disciplining, hiding, or feeling ashamed of those impulses that keep us from doing what we want to do in our lives. And then we shame of ourselves for not being able to control them. In other words, we hate what gets in our way. If you fear giving presentation, for example, you might try to use willpower to override the fear or to correct it with rational thoughts. If the fear persists, you might escalate your attempts to control by criticizing yourself for being a coward, numbing yourself into oblivion, or meditating to climb above it. And when none of those approaches work, you wind up adapting your life to the fear, avoiding the situations where you have to speak in public, feeling like a failure or wondering what's wrong with you. To make the matters worse, you go to a therapist who gives you a diagnosis for your one troubled mind. The diagnosis makes you feel defective, your self-esteem drops, and your feelings of shame lead you to attempt to hide any flaws and present a perfect image to the world. Or maybe you withdraw from relationships for fear that people will see behind your mask and will judge you for it. You identify with your weaknesses, assuming that who you really are is defective and that if other people saw the real you, they'd be repulsed. The big conclusion here is that parts are not what they have been commonly thought to be. They're not cognitive adaptations of sinful impulses. Instead, parts are sacred, spiritual beings, and they deserve to be treated as such. Listening to, embracing, and loving parts allows them to heal and transform as much as it does for people. On the other hand, if we hate or disdain our parts, we'll do the same with anyone who reminds us of them. Parts carry extreme beliefs and emotions in or on their bodies that drive the way they feel and act. The idea that parts have bodies that are separate and different from the person's body they are connected to may seem strange or preposterous at first. Regardless, This is how parts describe themselves, that they have bodies, and their bodies contain emotions and beliefs that came into them and don't belong to them. I'll stop here because the takeaway I want you to leave with is that if you notice dialogues in your head, it's a good thing. You're becoming aware of your parts who have assumed the responsibility to protect you in their own unique way, depending on their experience. Therefore, there are no bad parts. They are protectors, even if you and your other parts may feel judgmental towards one of them. A great step towards your healing can be zooming in whenever a new sensation shows up. The other day, I had a notification of an email, and suddenly I had a tightness in my stomach. I zoomed in and got curious about that feeling, and surely, there was my chameleon. I talked to it and asked questions. The peace was established, and we all agreed that I should check the email. It was good news. You've been listening to the podcast of Ilse B. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and share it to show me your support and help me grow. If you want to learn more about me, my causes, my products, and my services, please visit my website ilzebe.com. That's ILZEBE.com. Disclaimers. In this podcast, I talk about mental and physical health and what has helped me to heal. Nothing that I say should be regarded as medical advice. If you have any medical condition, consult your doctor. Also, I'm an artist and storyteller. I'm sharing my stories because that's what artistic people do. Take it as fiction and as a form of my art. Even though I may sound as if I'm recalling events from my past, I don't confirm they actually happened. And if they did, I'm not blaming or accusing anyone, nor should you. I take all my life lessons with gratitude, trusting that they are given to me to expand my soul.